A frail old man staggers down a busy New York sidewalk, gripping a battered briefcase like his life depends on it. Then his legs give out. He crumples onto the pavement, the briefcase slipping from his grasp as papers explode into the wind. People glance, hesitate, but then keep walking. Another day, another stranger in distress. For Arthur Hayes, this feels like the end. But what no one realizes is that, at this exact moment, a world-famous Hollywood star is stepping out of a nearby cafe. And what he's about to uncover will shock you. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. If you love powerful, emotional stories, hit that subscribe button and join us tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. for another incredible tale. Arthur Hayes moved through the city like a ghost. A weary old man in a worn-out coat, his gray hair unkempt, his eyes darting like a hunted animal. The battered briefcase in his hands wasn't just luggage. It was his last desperate hope. People brushed past him, lost in their own worlds. He tried to speak, to be heard. "Please, sir, just a moment," he begged a businessman. The man barely acknowledged him, striding away. Arthur turned to a woman walking her dog. "Miss, please listen to me." She recoiled, pulling her dog along as if he were invisible. Each rejection felt like another nail in his coffin. He wanted to scream. He wanted someone, anyone, to stop and hear him, but no one did. Then it hit him. A strange, crushing tightness in his chest. His breath turned shallow. The briefcase felt heavier, his limbs weaker. He stumbled, catching himself on a lamppost, his head spinning. Not now, not yet. He forced himself forward, but his body was failing him. The world blurred, sounds fading in and out. Then his knees buckled. The briefcase slipped. The papers, his last proof, his last fight, scattered like fallen leaves. He reached for it. His hands shook. He tried to speak. "My briefcase," but the words barely escaped his lips before the darkness swallowed him. And then, footsteps. A presence. Someone who wasn't just walking by. A figure crouched beside Arthur, their voice cutting through the noise. "Sir? Can you hear me?" No response. Without hesitation, they pulled out their phone. "I need an ambulance. Now." As they spoke, their eyes landed on the briefcase. The scattered pages, something about them, something urgent, something vital, made them pause. They didn't read them. Not yet. Instead, they carefully gathered every page, placing them back where they belonged. Then they shrugged off their own jacket and gently laid it over Arthur's frail body, shielding him from the cold. Even unconscious, Arthur still clung weakly to the briefcase, as if letting go meant losing everything. And the person kneeling beside him knew this was more than just a medical emergency. This was the beginning of something bigger. The ambulance sirens howled through the crowded streets, parting the sea of indifferent pedestrians as it screeched to a halt. Two paramedics leapt out, their movements swift, practiced. The man who had called for help, who was no ordinary bystander, stepped back, giving them space. "Pulse is weak," one of the paramedics muttered, pressing two fingers against Arthur's wrist. "BP crashing. We need to move now." As they lifted Arthur onto the stretcher, the briefcase nearly slipped from his grasp. His fingers, frail yet determined, tightened around the handle in an unconscious reflex. "Sir, we need to take this," the paramedic said, gently prying it from Arthur's grip. His hand resisted, even in his unconscious state. Whatever was inside, it mattered. The Hollywood star, still kneeling on the pavement, watched every moment unfold. And then, as the briefcase was set aside, something caught their eye. A single page that had slipped free, fluttering to the ground near their shoe. They picked it up. Their gaze flicked over the words, and instantly, the world around them seemed to shift. This wasn't just some random old man, and this wasn't just a briefcase. "Sir, are you coming?" A paramedic gestured toward the ambulance. The man hesitated, his grip tightening on the paper. He had no idea what he had just stepped into, but one thing was clear. He wasn't walking away now. "I'm coming," he said, following them into the ambulance. As the doors slammed shut and the vehicle sped off, one thought pulsed in his mind. Who exactly was Arthur Hayes? And what was so important that he was willing to die for it? Keanu sat in silence, his mind racing as he processed everything Arthur had just told him. The room felt heavier now, as if the weight of the truth had settled into the air itself. He glanced at the elderly man, weak, exhausted, but still holding on to his fight, and then at the battered briefcase resting between them. Finally, Keanu exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know who these people are," he admitted, his voice low but resolute. "And I don't know what they're capable of." He turned back to Arthur, eyes filled with quiet determination. "But I do know one thing. You shouldn't have to face this alone. I'll help you. We'll find a way to get justice." A faint, weary smile crossed Arthur's lips. Despite everything, the fear, the exhaustion, gratitude shone in his tired eyes. Thank you," he whispered. "I knew I could trust you. You stopped when no one else did." Arthur's eyelids grew heavier, his body surrendering to much-needed rest. Keanu remained still, watching him as he drifted off. The soft, rhythmic beep of the hospital monitors filled the silence, and yet Keanu's mind refused to rest. He looked down at the briefcase again, feeling its weight not just in his hands, but in his soul. But now he understood. He wasn't just holding on to Arthur's possessions, he was holding on to the truth. Arthur remained weak, but as the critical hours passed, the doctors assured Keanu that he had stabilized. For now. Still, they warned that his condition required intensive care. The tension in the room eased slightly, but Keanu knew the real battle was far from over. He exhaled slowly, then, almost instinctively, his fingers unlatched the briefcase. He hesitated. Would opening it betray Arthur's trust? But if he was going to help, he needed to understand what Arthur had risked his life for. Carefully, he lifted the lid and began leafing through the contents. What he saw made his breath catch. Financial reports, signed contracts, invoices meant for school programs, money that had never reached the students, and then something more chilling, photos of records showing where the funds had actually gone. A charity organization, one that supposedly managed the funds, stood at the center of it all. But it was a front. Keanu's eyes flicked across the pages, searching, connecting dots. The school's directors were involved. This was bigger than them. Certain names and signatures appeared too many times to be a coincidence. Then he saw it. A list of names, some of them familiar. Local politicians, high-profile figures, people who had the power to bury scandals before they ever reached the public eye. Keanu clenched his jaw. This wasn't just corruption, it was systemic, and Arthur had been trying to stop it alone. Among the documents, Keanu found a handwritten letter, Arthur's personal account of his attempts to expose the scheme. His words painted a harrowing picture. How every time he got close, they found him. How he had been silenced, threatened. How the very institutions meant to protect the innocent were controlled by the guilty. Keanu let out a slow breath, his grip on the letter tightening. This was why Arthur had run. This was why he had nearly died clutching that briefcase. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, then turned as he heard a faint rustling from the hospital bed. Arthur was waking. His eyelids fluttered open, his gaze settling on Keanu, and then on the briefcase in his hands. A weak smile ghosted across Arthur's lips. "You opened it, didn't you?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but there was no anger, only understanding. Keanu nodded and placed the briefcase back on Arthur's lap. "I had to. I needed to know what you were up against." His eyes met Arthur's. "And now I see. This is bigger than I thought." Arthur exhaled slowly, his fingers running over the worn leather. "I knew I couldn't do this alone. That's why I tried to take these to the authorities." His voice was tinged with regret. "But every time I got close, they found me. They have eyes everywhere." Keanu's expression hardened. "Not this time." His voice was steady, filled with conviction. "And now you have me." Arthur's hand trembled slightly as he reached for Keanu's. His grip was weak, but the intensity in his gaze was stronger than ever. "You need to understand," he said gravely. "Helping me means they'll come after you too." He swallowed. "This isn't just about me. It's about what these people will do to protect themselves." Keanu sat back, letting the weight of Arthur's words settle over him. He had walked into this without realizing the depth of the danger, but now there was no turning back. After a long pause, he asked, "Have you tried taking this to someone trustworthy?" Arthur let out a bitter chuckle, his voice laced with exhaustion. "I've tried everything, but they control the right people." His expression darkened. "We need someone who has the strength to get this into the right hands. No intermediaries." Keanu frowned, thinking, "A journalist. We need reliable journalists who can expose this before they have a chance to cover their tracks." Arthur nodded weakly. "But we have to act fast. If they find out these documents are here..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Keanu stood, determination settling into his stance. He began organizing the documents, preparing for what came next. But even as he moved with purpose, a creeping sensation prickled at the back of his mind. The feeling of being watched. He glanced toward the hospital room door. Nothing seemed out of place. And yet an undeniable tension lingered in the air. This wasn't paranoia. It was the reality of the fight they had just stepped into. For the first time, Keanu realized how deeply entangled he was in this web of lies, corruption, and danger. What had started as a simple act of kindness, helping a man on the street, had now become a battle for the truth. A battle that neither of them could afford to lose. Keanu sat in silence for a moment, his mind racing as he processed everything Arthur had just told him. The elderly man lay back against the hospital bed, his breathing shallow but steady. Keanu looked from Arthur to the battered briefcase resting on the small table beside him. He had seen corruption before, but nothing like this. A system so deeply entrenched, so ruthlessly protected that an honest man like Arthur had been left with nothing but a suitcase full of damning truths and a life spent running. "I don't know who these people are or what they're capable of," Keanu finally said, his voice measured but resolute. "But I do know one thing. You shouldn't have to face this alone. I'm going to help you. We'll find a way to get justice." Arthur's tired eyes filled with gratitude. A faint, weary smile crossed his lips. "I knew I could trust you. You stopped when no one else did." As Arthur closed his eyes, finally allowing himself a moment of rest, Keanu turned his gaze back to the briefcase. Now he understood. He wasn't just holding a pile of old papers. He was holding something far greater, something that could change everything. The revelation Arthur remained weak, but the critical hours passed and he seemed to stabilize. Still, the doctors warned Keanu that his condition required intensive care. The tension in the room eased slightly as Arthur managed to drift into a light sleep. But Keanu knew the battle was far from over. He stared at the briefcase, feeling the weight of the truth inside it. He had heard Arthur's story, but he still didn't know the full scope of what they were up against. He hesitated only for a moment before carefully unlatching the case. If he was going to help, he needed to understand exactly what Arthur had risked everything to protect. Inside, meticulously organized, were financial reports, invoices, signed contracts, and photographs of falsified records. Keanu's breath hitched as he realized the scale of the scheme. The documents detailed large sums of money meant for school programs, money that had vanished into the pockets of corrupt officials. One name kept appearing, an obscure charity organization supposedly managing the funds. But as Keanu flipped through the papers, it became clear. The charity was nothing more than a front, a funnel for the embezzled money. Then, among the stacks of documents, Keanu found something that sent a chill down his spine, a list of names. Many of them were familiar. Local politicians, business moguls, influential figures tied directly to the scheme. This wasn't just about one school. It was something much bigger. At the very bottom of the pile was a handwritten letter from Arthur, detailing his desperate attempts to expose the corruption. It described the threats, the betrayals, the moments he had come so close, only to be shut down at every turn. Keanu closed his eyes for a brief moment, inhaling sharply. Arthur had spent years carrying this burden alone. Not anymore. A dangerous game when Arthur woke. Keanu was still there, the briefcase resting in his lap. "You opened it, didn't you?" Arthur asked, his voice weak but without a hint of reproach. Keanu nodded. "I needed to understand what you were up against, to know how to help." He met Arthur's gaze. "And now I see. This is much bigger than I thought." Arthur sighed, his fingers brushing over the papers. "And now you have me," Keanu said firmly. "And I won't let them stop you this time." Arthur's grip tightened on Keanu's hand. "You need to understand. Helping me means they'll come after you too. This isn't just about me. These people will do anything to protect themselves." Keanu met his gaze, unwavering. "Then we make sure they don't get the chance." Exposing the truth together, they crafted a plan. The first priority, protect the evidence. Keanu reached out to his network, carefully seeking out journalists with reputations for fearless reporting. They needed people who couldn't be bought, who wouldn't be intimidated. Meanwhile, Keanu ensured Arthur got the medical care he needed. The elderly man was slowly regaining strength, but they both knew time was against them. They finally secured a meeting with a respected investigative journalist. When the reporter saw the documents, he was stunned. "This is going to shake the system," he whispered, flipping through the pages. But the moment the investigation began, the threats started. Anonymous phone calls, cars tailing, a shadow that seemed to follow Keanu and Arthur wherever they went. One night, as they reviewed documents in Arthur's hospital room, Keanu found a note slipped under the door. He opened it, his jaw tightening as he read the words. "Stop now. This is your only warning." Keanu showed the note to Arthur. The old man glanced at it and let out a dry chuckle. "They're scared," he said. "That means we're winning." Keanu tore the note in half. "We're not stopping. Not now. Not ever." The aftermath, the story broke. Headlines exploded across national news. The scandal was exposed. School administrators, local politicians, and other key players were arrested. The stolen funds were recovered and redirected to the programs they were meant for. Arthur, once a forgotten man on the fringes of society, was now celebrated. A hero. His years of struggle, of being silenced and discredited, had finally come to an end. But he didn't care about the recognition. "I just wanted the kids to get what they deserved," he told Keanu as they watched the news from the hospital room. Keanu made sure Arthur had the support he needed to rebuild his life. He helped set up a fund for his medical care and promised to check in on him regularly. Before Arthur was discharged, he held Keanu's hand one last time. "You changed my life," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I don't know how to thank you." Keanu smiled. "You changed mine too. You taught me that sometimes the most important stories come from the people the world overlooks. It was an honor to help you." As Arthur left the hospital, supported by Keanu, the world outside seemed a little brighter, a little more hopeful. The truth had prevailed. But Keanu knew one thing for sure. The fight for justice never truly ends. And sometimes the most forgotten person carries the most important truth. Never ignore someone who needs help. You could be the difference the world needs.